All right, we are here with Brent Kreizow, who just very recently passed the Maine Guide exam. Congrats, Brent.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah, so tell us about what you're going to do with your guide license.
So I was kind of in a unique situation. I run a wake surf charter business. So if people want to learn wake surfing or go out, they can hire me to take them out wake surfing in the Belgrade Lakes area on Great Pond, and also do e-foil lessons. And e-foil is an electric hydrofoil. It's like one of these electric surfboards that kind of it floats above the water. There's a mass that comes down, there's wings underneath, and you're about a foot or two above the water. So it's sort of like surfing electrically on flat water, but it's a unique sensation. It's really cool. But I started the company 2 years ago when I first called Maine, the Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. I was like, hey, is there any license? Like what regulatory? I'm thinking about doing this. And the guy was like, I don't know. I don't usually answer the phone. Let me get back to you. I'll find out. And he hung up the phone and called me back like an hour and a half later. He goes, well, we got into a big discussion here in the office, and half of us thought that if you're doing something like that, you should be licensed. And the other half said that you don't need a license. And so I was like, that's right. Exactly. Exactly. And so I was like, okay, let me get going. So last year was my first summer doing that, but then I'm like, you know what? If I get stopped by a game warden,
Yeah.
I'm up to his discretion. And I was like, I've always been intrigued since I was a little kid. I wanted to be I heard about Maine guides and kind of this elevated status. And so I was always had this kind of respect and lofty aspirations, like someday. And then I found out about the rec guide license. And I was like, maybe that can work. So I've always had it in the back of my mind. And I was like, if I get it, I will never have to have that worry if I'm stopped by a game warden or something. And who knows what other opportunities could have come about from it. But because of that, I decided, and I heard that they were beginning to request guides license for other wake surf operators that are down in the Sebago Lake area. So I said, let me go and get ahead and get it. So a lot of the material, I just say that and give you that background because a lot of the material doesn't apply to me. I'm taking people out wake surfing, or on a surfboard. But so I know in your course, like there's so much stuff about like canoes and paddle strokes and all that stuff. I'm like, I don't know, like this has zero bearing on what I'm doing. But I learned it all. It all.
I can relate to what you're saying because the majority of what I do is biking and bike touring. And do you need a guide license for that? It was the same kind of thing. Some people are like, yep. Some are like, nope. And outdoor recreation is evolving, and the Maine guide license is still a little bit old school. So I think there's an effort to get things modernized a little bit.
Yeah, and it's all great stuff. It's all great info, okay. But like I and we'll get into it in a second. But like I knew the map and compass and the catastrophic event, lost person scenario was huge, and those are things just from boater safety and years of boating experience that I know were critical, and that's kind of why I understand they wanted it. They request it, and so I knew that stuff forward and backwards, like no doubt.
Well, so let's jump into my next question then, which is what did you do to prepare for this? Given like you knew some of it was totally foreign to you. How did you prepare for this test?
I studied so intensely. I some of these things, like I'd always been in awe of people who could tell trees apart and fish. I'm like, I don't know, it's got fins and scales, like I lived on a lake for about 17 years, and it's like I don't fish. It's not something. It's always something. Oh, that'd be nice, but I don't have the time to sit around and wait for things to happen. Like I that's what I think about when I see fishing. And I know that's not it, but that's kind of my joke. Sure. But I took another guides course. And that was in person, a 3-day course, and they covered everything: hunting, fishing, and rec guide stuff.
And that was with, it was at Fins and Furs.
Fins and Furs, yep, with Carol
Yep.
and Lila, yep, and great things. I got a notebook of stuff and like the regs, and so I've learned just in school that I read it one time through the pertinent information. I read it, and then I went and I took my notes on it and repetition. I just kept going, and then I would, if I only had a couple minutes, I'd take my notes because I was only going through 15, 20 pages of notes versus reading stuff. And then I just kept reading it, and then found out about your course and did that. And in all honesty, I don't know if I could have done it with just one course, one or the other. I love the new media. I'm a web user, but there were things that were covered in Gravel Road Guide Service course that weren't that didn't come up, and so I studied intensely. I took the other course 5 months ago, and
Yep.
then I kind of went through yours more recently, and as a way to review, and there were certain things that just ways that was covered or other material that was just added in there. I was like, that's good. And
Yeah.
I studied from that notebook quite a bit right after the test. I did a pretty good job. And then we went back to Belgrade. I'm in Bethel for the school year, and then summer happened and I didn't study that much. And we just came back in the beginning of September. I was like, oh my God, my exam's coming up in 2 weeks.
Oh
And
no.
I studied almost like a full-time job,
Yep.
40 hours a week. And I didn't stop learning things until the day before my exam. I studied it like it was literally like it was my job. One of the reasons I wanted to do this interview with you is you had done an interview, I think, with Sarah,
Yep.
who had just passed, and she mentioned one of the examples was the 7 principles of leave no trace, and that's something that I hadn't heard anywhere else. And so I went and I studied that, and I wrote it down and quizzed myself hard. And in the exam, he asked me, he goes, "This leave no trace thing is in vogue right now. What are the principles behind that?" And I started ripping them off, and I got to 5, and I was getting ready to say 6. He goes, "Okay, I got it. I know you know." Like, he cut me off, but literally, if I hadn't have done that, I would have been like, nope, and it just would have been one more little knock and insecurity for
So
me.
it's so funny you say that, Brent, because when she said that, I had never heard of that being on the test. And that's kind of why I want to interview all these people who just took the test. And I was like, we need to add that to the online guide program because clearly that's what they're asking now.
Yeah.
And to echo what you said, I also took 2 guide classes. I'll give them a shout out. I took Maine Outdoor Learning Center's class, and then I took one with Maine Upland Guide Service. And I feel a lot like you did, like having the 2 different perspectives was really valuable to me. So but I am glad to know they're asking about leave no trace now. So we're going to add a chapter to the online course for sure.
Yeah. It's I studied, God, I don't know, because it was intensely and then barely, just a little bit here and there. And I was like, oh, I got map and compass. And then as it got closer, I'm like, what if I don't have it? And so I practiced a bunch. And then I was like, I'm good with that. And it came at the other thing is I studied super intensely. And then the weekend before, I spent about 5 hours a day just going over things. I'm like, okay, I know knots. I don't need to keep practicing knots. And it's like, and I just kept knocking things off the list. And it's not that I stopped studying, but I tried to stop worrying. I'm like, I'm not going to take on, I've gone over the material I have access to. And I tried to be calm, and I was like, just before I left to get in the car, I'm like, I know this stuff. Like, I know this. And like, just, that's not to say I wasn't nervous walking in there, but I knew I had done the work. And if I wasn't going to pass, it wasn't for lack of effort. But I put the time in. So I don't know, 100 hours of studying over 5 months, maybe.
Well, I knew you were going to be great. My dogs are fighting, by the way, they're wrestling. I knew you were going to be great when you were able to rattle off why the lines on canoes are called painters. I was like, Brent, you're so good. Like every trick question you've got. So we know you were super ready. So if you could just walk us through the day, walk us through the actual test, how it went, the order of events, what kind of questions they asked you. We want to know all the details.
Yep. So my exam was at 1 o'clock, and it's something that Fins and Furs Adventures, Carolyn and Lila recommends. Get there an hour prior. Get there an hour prior. And it doesn't matter if your test is at 7 o'clock in the morning. Get there at 6 o'clock because you might get in. And one of the reasons why is they strongly feel that doing your written test, the multiple choice, getting that down out of the way kind of gets the juices flowing at your kind of on your time frame, and before you have to go on stage more or less. And I was at 1 o'clock, and it says very clearly in Billy Joe's email that their office is closed between 12 and 1 for lunch. And so I'm like, ugh, what can I do? But I was like, I'll get there 45 minutes early. It's an hour and a half drive from Bethel here.
Yeah.
I got, just before I was about ready to lose cell service, I got a call from Bangor on my cell phone. I'm like, it's spam. And then a voicemail popped up. I listened. He goes, hey, this is Mike, one of your examiners. We could take you right now if you can come in. If not, whenever you get here, or we'll see you at 1 o'clock at your scheduled time. And I was like, oh boy. So I was like, I knew it was going to be go time right when I got there. There's no more studying. And so I was like, so that was at, I think, 11 o'clock. So that was 2 hours prior. I could have been in the parking lot and ready to go. If I had been there. So I recommend getting there early, regardless of what time, getting there early. Do some last minute studying if you want.